welcome to the show.
Thank you kindly. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so I'm going to take you back to Belmond, Iowa. Do you remember that place?
Yes, Belmont, town of 2,500.
2,500. You've come a long
Yeah.
way since Belmond, Iowa. That is the town of cornfields, tractors. If I were to sort of take you back to that time and ask you, did you think that you'd ever be hanging out in the south of France, or hunting pheasants with British royalty, or teeing off at St. Andrews? If I would have stopped you in the streets at the Kmart and told you that, what would you say?
I would say it was seemingly impossible. Yeah, seemingly impossible. You know, you're talking a town that has one grocery store, two gas stations, and four tractor dealerships when I was growing up. So it was pretty, yeah, not super exotic.
Yeah, and as we'll get into when we start talking about sunglasses, you can't see yourself selling those sunglasses to the tractor guy, huh?
Well, I think it's a good perspective of just kind of understanding uh, that there's a lot of different ways to go through life, depending on what you're passionate about. And so, yeah, I could still make glasses for guys that drive tractors.
Okay, maybe we got a whole new John Deere thing.
I did do a collaboration with John Deere at one point with a different brand that I was working on, and so yeah, I think it gave me a little hometown credibility.
That's
My
really
parents
interesting.
my parents are pretty happy to take the John Deere glasses that I did with a brand called Paul Frank to all their friends.
I know Paul Frank. I don't know him personally, but I know the brand for sure. And I want to talk about your parents a little bit. In what ways did your mom, Sherry, and your dad, Don, instill the appreciation for the arts and, sort of like curate this wanderlust that you have now?
Yeah, I think my mom. I mean, first of all, the family calls her Sister Mary Sherry because she does nearly everything perfectly. And so I think that when she had two young boys, it was her thing of like how do I put a perfect life together for them. And so she was a full-time mom, but on the side she was a choreographer. And so I think I saw every Rodgers and Hammerstein play on the planet before I was like 15 years old. And but mom always was just a planner, and so she'd be like, okay, we're gonna take the kids to, Hawaii or Acapulco or wherever the place that would be fun to spend the winter was, and they would save up all year, and the vacations were a big deal. And so it kind of made me realize that I could go to an airport, and depending on what gate I went through, you could end up nearly anywhere in the world. And so I learned that at a pretty early age.
Isn't that fascinating? I still, because I travel so much, I still, not so much obviously when I'm in the domestic airport, but when I'm walking through the international airport and I pass gate 53 and it says Paris and 54 is Berlin, and it's just like, you just get this giddiness that is like, what is on the other side of, even with, being in the back of the bus on the plane and it's not perfect, and, all your shit's all falling apart, and TSA makes you, do a rectal exam before you get it. It's still exciting, isn't it?
It's super exciting. I love walking down the airport and going like, I haven't been there yet. Like I need to put that on my radar. Or sometimes you see you see something on the international side. You're like, I don't even know where that is. You
Right,
know.
exactly. Machu Picchu. I have no idea. Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit. Can you tell me the story of heading west? Sounds like go west, young man. Heading west to California, and how a little Italiano named Massimo Giannulli, I probably butchered it, entered your life.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. So yeah, mom drives me to college. I go to school up in the Bay Area, and my best friend that I latched on to early in the time. We both loved to surf, and his parents had a beach house down at in Laguna Beach. It's a place called El Moro. There's no homes there now, but it used to be trailer homes back in the day, and it was like the coolest uh, trailer trash like place on the planet. And a lot of people had beach homes there. And so when I went down with my college roommate for the summer. We would play volleyball on the beach, and yeah, I met a dude named Massimo. And so when I graduated, uh, he said, like, look, I'm hiring people in the warehouse right now. Do you want a job? And of course, with a degree in industrial technology, my parents weren't super thrilled that I was going to go to work in a warehouse, but I just said, like, hey, I got to pay the bills for now while I'm going to get a real job. And so, yeah, I learned to fold t-shirts and started with that company, I guess in the mid '90s. And we went from about 10 people in that company to about 300. And when we were going through the whole process of growth and everything, I Massimo said, like, geez, you have this kind of fancy degree and it seems like you're wasting it. I'm going to start an eyewear division, which seems slightly more technical. So why don't you go ahead and head up the eyewear division? And yeah, and so there was two people in the division. I ran the back of the business, so I answered the phone and fixed the glasses, and but at the same time learned to import and export, and manage goods, cost of goods sold, and all the things that I would kind of need to start a business later. But yeah, the company grew up to about 300 people. It went public on the New York Stock Exchange. We were all young and silly and flying around in planes and trains and automobiles, and yeah, it was a great learning experience.
Well,
I always say,
let's go
yeah, go
back
ahead.
there a little bit. What kind of
Yep.
business was that business?
Yeah, I need to go slower with some of this stuff. That business was an apparel business that made volleyball shorts and T-shirts in the beginning, and ended up becoming a lifestyle brand. Ultimately, the brand went through, I guess, a 15-year growth pattern, and then ended up being the brand that most people have seen in Target, I guess, over the last 10 years or so.
Well, the brand in Target, tell me the name of it in Target. What's it called?
It's Mossimo.
It's Massimo. Okay, but that's
Right.
not the same as Moschino, right? That's different?
Yeah, no, no, it's not the Italian fashion brand. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's a couple rungs down for that. I actually honestly don't know if it's in Target anymore. It's this
Okay.
is kind of a this is about a 25, 30 year run, something like that, that the brand's been around.
Okay. So you were sort of into surfing. Are you still a surf guy now or no?
Yeah, I love surfing, and I will say when you before we went live and you talked about being a diva, I've surfed some of the best waves in the world. I've spent 6 different trips over to Indonesia, and I will only say that living in Southern California, the water is cold, the waves are crowded, the level of surfing is really really high, and so you get spoiled when you go to the outer Mentawai Islands, outside of Sumatra, where you just have unbelievable barrels. It's just you and your friends, and you're having a great time. And so I'm slightly jaded
Yeah.
nowadays. Yeah,
Well, I get it. I
like
mean,
anything else.
whenever you have like the best steak in the world, it's like you can't eat anything else or sushi or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm actually the opposite on this. I moved to Southern California a year ago this week. I was in Atlanta for 25 years. And I've always dreamed of surfing, but never did it. And so when I moved here, the only beach I know, or the only waters I know, I live in Hermosa. So the only beach I know is Hermosa, Manhattan Beach. I have no reference for anything else, and I almost feel like I don't want to do anything else because I know I'm stuck, doing these shitty waves until I get the good stuff. So,
Yeah.
speaking of elevating things, you made a decision to step out into, or before you stepped out on your own, you actually worked within an eyewear company that you were involved with, and it was something that you started to mention did really really well. I mean, you guys shot up and you did great, but it also shot down, and it also did not do so well. What did that drop in stock teach you about business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just really learned that when you're a young company and going up and you have talented people, more talented people go to work for the companies, and they might have not have the best experience, but it's the energy and the execution. So you might have a guy that he's just he was a good skateboarder, and he ended up being like a brilliant marketing guy because he knew what the kids wanted, and he was hyper focused and a workaholic. And so then I learned, when a company goes public, they might say like, well, Mr. Marketing Skateboarder guy, you've done a great job to get it this far. But now, we're going public and we need real executives in here. So you're going to report to, Mr. Such and Such, who came highly regarded from Calvin Klein, and it's a much bigger brand and he has much more experience. So you now report to him. And I realized that a lot of that magic that was in the bottle was kind of emasculated, as the company went public. And so I learned way more on the way down that a lot of talent was kind of put in the corner, and a lot of mediocre people that had good resumes were put in control, and the magic was gone.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the magic is sort of difficult to define in the beginning, but once you get it, once you lose it, you know that it's gone.
Yeah.
Um, so you made a decision to step out on your own, and you headed to Newport Beach to surf, among other things, and you wanted to brainstorm a new business. What was the triggering event that made you say, "I'm going to go out on my own here. I want to do this myself"?
Well, truth be told, I got fired.
Okay,
The
that's a
only time I've
triggering
been
event.
well, it's the only time I've been fired in my life. I just got back from a trip to Indonesia, and I guess the timing didn't go over so well with the owner of the company. And so, yeah, I was just watering my spice garden the next morning. And I'm like, you know what? I hated my job. I wasn't learning anything. And I'm just going to go it alone. And yeah. And so there was just that moment where I was living relatively lean. And you just said, like, hell, I'm going to give it a shot. You don't want to be one of those people that, like, you spend your whole life saying, I really always wanted to, but I never did. And so that was just the impetus where I said, I got to do it.
Okay, so when you decided to do it, what exactly were you after growing? This was an eyeglass company, yeah?
Yeah, correct. I just said, like, I've kind of learned every part of the eyewear business from, design, sales, marketing, manufacturing, support, inventory, customer service, all of that. And so I just said, like, I'm going to start an eyewear company, and I'm not sure exactly what that's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to license other brands. I don't know if I'm going to put my name on it. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be. But yeah, as of today, I'm starting an eyewear company.
Now,
And
do you
yep.
find when you're visualizing or when you're creating your goals, do you get lost in the how are you going to accomplish your goals, or are you more of a big picture guy that says, yeah, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this thing, but I know what I want, and it's going to unfold the way it unfolds. Like, where are you with, sort of like manifesting what it is that you're after?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like putting into, you know, trusting that good projects are going to come up, and that good energy and good work will result into the next thing. So yeah, it was one of those ones when I started the company, I knew the guys at Paul Frank. Um, they had started the company with about 6 guys, and I kept in contact with them. And all of a sudden, they were now at about 60 people. So their company was enduring a lot of growth during that time. And so I just said, like, why don't you let me license your brand, and I'll make eyewear for you. And so that was kind of the first impetus, or the first project that I worked on when I started the company.
Okay, so this is an interesting question, and I'm not sure how to ask it, so I'm just going to say it. When I'm sitting next to somebody on an airplane, and I see that they have a $15,000 to $20,000 Birkin bag, and I'm on my way to Italy, and I know that the leather in that bag is as good as the leather I'm going to find in Italy, and I could probably buy the leather for, I don't know, a 1/1000th of the price. What is it that makes a lifestyle brand like a Louis Vuitton or a Birkin bag, like an Hermes or something like that? What is it that makes people willing to spend 1,000 times or more the value of what they're actually holding? Like, what's the psychology? Is it they want to be part of a tribe, or how do you think about that?
the way that I think about it is the way that I think about food. I mean, there's quality of ingredients and everything, and to get you know a certain kind of truffle, or to get a certain kind of wine that's really at the upper echelon of excellence. That's just the best of the best. I mean, there's an associated cost, and there's also scarcity of supply, and so I always think about those things like, why would it be worth it? And I start thinking about, like kind of like working your life in reverse. You're like, at the end of it, like, what are my children going to take away from uh, whatever I've accumulated during the course of my life? And they will keep a vintage car or a vintage motorcycle. They will keep a Birkin bag. They will keep these heirloom pieces that you chose for them, because A, they're meaningful because you owned them, and B, the quality of them is so good that they will last forever. So I mean, it's like the coolest investment ever. You're like, I'm buying this once for my family forever. And
So
with that
so when you
mindset, I think you make those decisions.
okay, so when you design something, um, even eyewear, you're thinking about that sort of longevity of the product, yeah?
100%. When I created my brand, Leisure Society, right when I had finished uh, an extended career designing for Louis Vuitton, I did spend a lot of time in the Vuitton family house going through their archives. So it really set the mood for me of like, they had been making products for, over 100 years. And it started setting that mood for like, well, if you wanted to make something that was really like the best of the best, what would it look like in 100 years? And so if you make every decision based on that as a goal, it's easy to make decisions. You're like, what's the best pot? What's the best lenses? What's the best plating that we could do? What's the best materials to make the glasses from? So every single process that we made in creating Leisure Society was just based on, heirloom design, and how could we possibly make something that with the intention of it lasting forever.
What did you do for Louis Vuitton?
I was the only American designer other than Marc Jacobs that was hired by the company, and I was tasked with designing their eyewear collection.
And that was which years?
I guess that was 2006, 2000, yeah, kind of 2004 to 2006, right in
So
that
you,
era.
so you get this call somewhere in the mid 2000s where somebody says, "Hey, we want you to come over to us and design eyeglasses." That's got to be I will never get that phone call in my life. Nobody's ever going to call me from Louis Vuitton and say design these anything. Um, that
Well,
must have been. Go ahead.
there's a funny little story for that. And
Go ahead. Tell me.
you were setting it up. We were at a trade show in Paris, and so um, and we had a few other brands that I was designing for. One was the Munsingwear original Penguin brand
Yep.
out of New York, and we were doing Paul Frank, and so those were getting some notoriety, and um, so the booth was really packed at the show, and we had this like phone book stack of orders, and we were all high fiving, and the champagne corks were flying. And I had a vintage record player there, and the music's like cranked up, and so we almost have this like party going on because at the end of the show. So they go, Shane, there's some people here from LVMH that would like to talk to you. So they said, like, look, I guess Marc Jacobs had seen some of the work that I'd done on this eyewear, and he wanted us to contact you. And how do you feel about, do you own the company? Are you available for hire, this, that, or the other? And so I just said, like, look, I'm super busy right now, and I don't know where I could find something like this, fit something like this in my schedule. But let's keep in touch and see what happens downstream. And so we finished the meeting, and then they left, and uh, one of my employees over there looks at me and he goes, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "That's Louis Vuitton." I go, "I know. I just heard in fashion you can't be too available."
Oh
And
my
so,
God, that is
yeah,
so funny. And so
yeah,
obviously you then got the call and said, we'll sweeten the deal, come meet with us, and we'll make it worth your while. And then you decided to take the gig.
yeah. And I took the gig, and I will say, like, I know that this podcast is called Work Hard, Play Hard, but I took that interview so seriously. I you know, um, read everything I could about the company. I dressed, put the outfit together, like a week in advance. I didn't drink on the plane on the way over for once. Um, you know, I tend to get hot when I get in a nervous situation. I mean, I went to the interview with the windows down in the taxi cab, trying to get as cold as I could, so
Yeah.
I didn't perspire when I was kind of under the questioning. And so I took the interview very seriously, and Yeah, I got the
And where
gig.
did you do the interview? Was it in Paris or Italy?
It was in Paris.
It was in Paris. I
Yeah,
can
at their headquarters.
God bless the French. Everything is great about France except the French, right? They're not so easy to deal. Let's be honest. As great as they are, they're not so easy to deal with. I can only imagine what being interviewed by somebody like a Louis Vuitton brand, like what that had to feel like.
Yeah, no, they're definitely looking up and down from your shoes to like how you know what how you're dressed, your how you're accessorized, and it was yeah, it was a pretty thorough interview. It's funny that you say that about the French. I remember one time at a, uh, I was late for a flight, and the person at the counter who was French seemed to find joy in telling me that my ticket was worthless, and that's what reminded me when you said like the French are difficult sometimes.
They're just
They're like,
they're I mean like
the ticket is
I love them. I want to love them more. They just don't like us that much. Is really what it comes down to. It's not I don't even have a judgment about them. I just know that they have a judgment about me. I've spent
yeah,
many trips in Paris, so I speak to it, and I have tons of French friends. One time I was at a dinner party, and I said to him, I got just drunk enough where I said to him, "The hell's going on with you guys? Like, why do you hate us?" He said, "Please listen. The French don't even like the French. It has nothing to do with you." I was
I
like,
love that.
I
I
was
love
like,
that. The French don't even like the French.
I was
Some
like,
sort of Napoleon complex for all of them.
it's like okay,
Oh,
all right. So now you got that thing rocking and rolling, and you are doing that for a year. In what ways do you think that training there or your experience there served you to go out on your own and do your own thing? Like, what did you learn from there that was that you still use?
yeah, just a lot of discipline. They were, when we finished the frames, the prototypes would go to the lab to be tested for quality control. And if they didn't pass, they just didn't make the season. And it was really like, I'd never been in a company where they said like, oh, no, 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 this will go out next year instead. And you're like, we can't wait for a year, like we need to be on trend and it needs to be done. And they're just very patient and very methodical and very committed to their craft and making sure that things are done perfectly, and the reputation is more important than anything. And so that's really what my takeaway was.
So they're willing to forego the American quick buck to make sure that they have a legacy product there.
Yeah, 100%. Well said.
Yeah, cool. Okay, tell me. I once watched this show on 60 Minutes about a company that you're going to know called Luxottica, right? And
Yeah.
I knew I was going to get a smile as soon as you heard that word. And if memory serves me correctly, they're doing 95% of every piece of eyewear that's on people's faces in the world. Is that right?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, they're the 900-pound gorilla in our industry. And besides owning the license to some of the most prominent fashion houses in the world, they also, own companies like Ray-Ban and Oakley. And I mean, they're massive. And then I don't even know what the current door count is in the US, but at one point it was 8,000 um, doors of vertical retail. So when you go to Sunglass Hut, when you go to Lens Crafters, when you go to Pearl Vision Center, when you go to Costco, all of those are just owned by one company. It's pretty crazy.
How did that happen? How is there no antitrust oligopoly? You can't do this law that broke the baby bells apart. Like, how has this not happened?
Honestly, I think there has been some discussions about, antitrust issues, but I mean, the bottom line is like they just became really powerful and they were really good at what they did. And Mr. Del Vecchio, who founded the company, was great at getting all the couture brands because they're all based in Italy and France. And so once he had all the fashion brands under his roster, they were very aggressive in expanding their vertical retail, and they were just really great at what they did during the growth period. And so they're massive now. Although I will say now that there is a movement right now of people, they call them independent eyewear dealers. And so you run into people and they go, no, we don't carry any Luxottica type products or licensed brands. We only work with independent eyewear companies. So there's a small movement coming up now.
Okay, so when you make your glasses, do they go to Luxottica? to be made?
No, no, we don't use any of their factories. All of our stuff's made in a region of Japan called Fukui, which is about 2 hours inland by train from Osaka.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah,
So you do it in
uh,
Japan. Why did you choose to do it in Japan over Luxottica for the piece that you mentioned earlier about sort of the what's the word? I guess heirloom, right? Is that the word you're sort of like? Yeah.
yeah, heirloom. Yeah, we call it California heirloom design. Truthfully, most of the Luxottica factories are not available uh, for outside manufacture. So I couldn't really even use their factories if I wanted to, nor would I wish to. Most of their stuff, I might get in trouble for saying this, but most of their stuff um, has a lot of pre-production, I would say, in China, and then oftentimes it's finished in Europe for the couture brands, and it's a well-known fact for most people. And if you tour um, the factories, you do see products that are, made in Europe out of those Chinese factories.
Is that the
But
same for bags, like purses and things like that?
I don't. Well, I can't comment on that. I'm not an expert, and I don't know. I know
Okay.
that I can say hand to heart with Louis Vuitton that there's never a company that has more integrity than they do. I mean, they for certain, everything is made um, in France, and I will tell you, I mean, I convinced them to work with a factory that we currently work with in Japan. And it was one of the first times that they had done production outside of France. I think it was the first time that they had done production outside of Europe. Yeah, not France, but Europe. So it was a big deal for them to work with a Japanese manufacturer.
Okay, so you're a lifestyle guy, right? You want to live. I see why our mutual friend Kayla wanted us to connect. You're all about having a great life, right? You want to have great, beautiful things around you and lead a great life. You're in, one of the most, while California is being sort of looked at as North Korea these days for a lot of reasons, it also, it's like I said to a buddy of mine. It's like he said, "How's living in California?" I said, "It's like having a crazy hot ex girlfriend that you love. That you stay with her because the sex is good, but she's crazy. Like that's kind of that's kind of how I see where I'm living right now. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's idyllic and
Oh,
beautiful, but damn, that bitch is crazy.
yeah.
So the question I have for you is you strike me as somebody that probably is in love with all things Europe, right? Italian and French and that sort of like La Dolce Vita kind of vibe, you know? Um,
Yeah, 1,000%. I will say just in general that I like things that are tested by time and have meaning to them. And so, yeah, I'm very much just into history in general, and
yep.
um, and the exploration of, the evolution of. I mean, it's actually kind of interesting. I named my company Leisure Society. If you don't mind me going on a quick
No,
tangent here.
no, tangent away.
But when I but when I started studying, I mean, this paper's been written about the evolution of the leisure society, and it was basically like during the Industrial Revolution when people actually started leaving their homes to go on holiday. That it was a completely new thing, and people don't know that before there was trains and steamships and stuff like that, you just kind of stayed at home, and you maybe like got your horses together and went to the countryside or to the mountains or somewhere like kind of within a day or two's travel time. But other than that, you didn't go on holiday. And so the whole evolution of going on vacation, and you know, if you read books about it, it's a very interesting study. The evolution of the leisure society, and the author's name is Verbulum. And yeah, it's a good spend of time if you want to read of just saying like, what do you mean people haven't been going on vacations forever? And you're like, no, they haven't.
That's really, really
Yeah.
interesting. Now, you ever lived in Europe for an extended period of time?
Yeah, I've lived in Vienna for a summer, and I spent I don't know, call it a half a year in London also.
Okay. Would you ever find yourself moving to Europe, where where you can live for I don't know, get a villa in Tuscany maybe at some point in your life. Do you see that in your future?
Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the things that I will say about, you know, uh, obviously America's so politicized right now. And if you do spend an extended amount of time in a different country, you start thinking of yourself as a citizen of the world. And then you spend a little bit more time just observing instead of being obsessed with what's going on in your country. Because, I mean, and even, even if people are upset with the US right now, I mean, within a day's drive, you can make it to Mexico or Canada. So you got options. And I don't know. So I could see myself spending a lot of time over there, specifically, and like I said, Tuscany couldn't be better. Austria, I really fell in love with. It's just on the northern end of the Italian border. And so, you have Venice right there. You have Cortina and the Italian Alps. Alta Badia. You have the lakes, Lake Como and Garda and Maggiore. You have Switzerland right next door.
All right, so let's dig into what the Royal and Ancient Leisure Society is. It sounds like some sort of underground movement. What is it? Why'd you come up with it? What do I need to know about it?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I've always been a big fan of, secret societies and stuff like that. And I'm not like a conspiracy theory guy, but I always kind of like, you know, kind of going, looking at, secret societies and whatnot. So anyway, coming from a small town, Belmont, Iowa, 2,500, mom has a box of wine in the fridge and I'm making more money in Southern California and starting to experience more things. And somebody once coined the term culture vulture because I kind of realized when I came out here, to California, being a wholesome Midwestern kid, and I realized that like I could go to punk rock concerts on the weekend, I could go to ballet on the weekend, I could do a lot of different things, and I didn't have to let any one of the cultures define me. I could just be a culture vulture and take them all in. So anyway, when things started going better in business, I started putting some beautiful itineraries together. So I'm like, Rob, good news. The limousine's going to pick you up at 8 in the morning and whisk you off to breakfast at the Four Seasons. From there, you'll take your first class coach down to opening day at Del Mar, which has been a tradition, since the 1930s. Hollywood royalty would go down and do that. And so it was a really like fabulous itinerary that I'd put together, used all the connections I could to get good box seats at the opening day. And then coming from Shane from Belmont, Iowa, didn't seem fancy enough. So just on top, I wrote by order of the Royal and Ancient Leisure Society. And so Leisure Society outings from then on started becoming, it would just be really interesting. I'd send it out to a group of friends and I'm like, hey, we're going lawn bowling this weekend. It's another Leisure Society outing. And so whenever it was cultural, it was an event that was tested by the annuals of time. They became Leisure Society events. So when I had finished my term at LVMH and launched my own brand, my mentors said, like, look, your resume is not going to get any better. Come out with your own brand. So I'm like, Leisure Society by Shane Baum.
I
And
love that.
yeah.
I love that because Shakespeare said, "What's in the name?" Right? A lot. So that's awesome. So you're really living this lifestyle brand. In fact, not only do you surf and are you a culture vulture, but you play polo. So how the heck do you play polo? I can't even ride a horse. How do you ride a horse and get that thing in the what is it called? The net. What are you getting? The goal. Is
It's
it the
just between the
goal?
two goals. Yes, between the two goals. Yes.
All right.
Um,
How does one pick up playing polo?
it's a random thing because I mean I grew up around farms and horses and stuff like that, and never had any interest at all. And but what I did have an interest in is raising my children in like a lifestyle. It's probably like the same way as my mom. Like I wanted to give them some sort of um, I don't know, upgrade from, like Belmont, Iowa or anything else. So the girls, my children, they're 16 and 19 too, but at the time they were 12 and 11 and 8. And so they loved horses. They were obsessed with horses. They loved riding horses. So, I'm a couple margaritas deep at a wood racket tennis tournament. and there's a silent auction there, and it says lessons at the Orange County Polo Club. And I'm like, geez, it'd be kind of nice if my girls played polo since they already know how to ride horses, and that would be something that would be, kind of a time tested, age old sport of kings, and it would be really fun for them. So I called to the Orange County Polo Club here, and Heather, who still runs the program, says no problem. They're all set Thursday at 4:30. She goes, this lesson's for 4 people, and if you want a lesson too, you could join. And I was just sitting there thinking, and I'm like, well, I'm afraid of horses. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'd be sitting in the car. So I'm like, I'll do it. So I got there, with my Chuck Taylor tennis shoes and the helmet on all sideways. It was like a bicycle helmet. And I didn't know what I was doing. And my children started heckling me. They're like, Papa, you're terrible. Like, get your feet down, get your heels down, get your shoulders back. And I'm like, your pop Scott's, has this. And so we're riding around, and they're teasing me. But then we went to hit the ball, and it's a lot like the golf swing. And I've been an avid golfer my whole life. So I could kind of hit the ball a long ways. And they're like, well, Papa, you're like a professional like ball hitter. And so you're pretty good. And so I'm like, I had my niche, but I was terrible at riding horses. So, one lesson turned into six, and six turned into 12. And Heather tried to call and cancel because of rain one day. And I just said, Heather, come on, like we can go up on the hill. It's got to be dry up there. Or, we can go. What about the covered arena? She goes, Shane, there's no polo in the covered arena. And I said, well, geez, like who owns it? I'll call them. And so eventually she said, look, I don't mean to be rude right now, but I'm going to hang up on you. And so she hung up the phone. I'm like, oh my God, I am so addicted to this sport. And so, yeah, I had to learn from scratch. I mean, how to take care of horses, how to put saddles on them, how to trailer them, how to give them shots, all of it. And I did it with my girls and with the family. And then a few years later, my wife joined. And so like we're 4 people that absolutely are obsessed with horses. We love the sport. And also like we spend a good deal of our time bringing our friends into it, saying like, hey, this is totally accessible to you. We can have lessons. I'm taking a group out next Thursday. If you want to go. I mean,
it's definitely piquing my interest for sure.
yeah.
How often are you playing now?
I play during the season twice a week. And then so it's the off season right now. Everything starts out in Indio, January through March. So right now, uh, in the summer, the horses were turned out. It means they're on vacation a little bit, and so they can get fat and just eat hay and stuff. And then now they're
Yeah.
being what's called brought back up, and so they start jogging again and training. And then as the training gets closer to the game days, they'll be what's called singled, where like a professional or myself will take them riding to make sure that they're tuned up and ready to play. And the season starts in Indio in January.
Well, I'm definitely with the horses. I'm turned out right now, so I've got to I got to do a little bit of work before I get there. So I'm going to wait for my invite on the Leisure Society, and maybe meet you for a mint julep or whatever it is that you fancy polo players drink on the side of the court. Is it a court? It's a course. It's not a court. It's a
Uh,
course.
it's a field, and
Fields. See.
yeah, and the games are made up of chukkers that are 7.5 minutes long, and there's 6 of them with about a 5 minute break in between. When you talked about mint juleps, it made me excited because I forgot the Masters is next weekend. That's exciting.
That's well. I came from Atlanta, so I'm right. I'm
Oh,
right there with you. Shane, thanks for
totally.
everything, buddy.
Thanks, Rob. I really enjoyed it. Have a good one, and I look forward to meeting you in person at some point in the future.
You too, buddy.